didn't. There have been more Disney Oz projects than most Oz fans are probably aware of. In fact, there have been so many that, although I hope to cover all of them in my presentation today, there may be a few that eluded my notice. I'd like to make a note here of explanation before I begin the major part of the talk. It's about the name Disney. When I say Walt or Walt Disney, I'm referring to the man. And when I say Disney or Disney Company, I'm referring to the company. So I just don't want you to get confused if I say Disney. That means the company, not the man. Any discussion of Oz and Disney starts with Walt Disney himself. Walter Elias Disney was born in Chicago, Illinois on December 5th, 1901. Whether he was familiar with the Oz books when he was a child is unknown, but I think the chances are that he was. In fact, I just talked to Anthony Tringali last night, who has talked to a relative of Walt Disney's who said, yes, he definitely was familiar with the Oz books and read them as a child. As a young child, Walt listened while his mother read him fairy tales. As he grew older, he became a voracious reader. He devoured the works of Mark Twain and Charles Dickens, and as a teenager, he loved the adventure stories of Jimmy Dale, alias the Gray Seal. This is the logo for the Ozell Company. Look familiar? There was probably no connection between Oz and the Ozell Company. Walt's father bought stock in the company, and in 1917 became manager of the Ozell Jelly Factory in Chicago. Walt worked there for his father, washing jars and smashing apples during his teenage years, while at the same time taking art lessons. Walt wanted to be an artist and became fascinated by the short animated movies of the time. In partnership with iWorks, Walt formed an animation studio, Laugh-O-Gram Films. Walt's continued interest in children's fairy tales is evident in his earliest animated films, Little Red Riding Hood and Puss in Boots. His first major films, the series of Alice shorts that combined live action with animation, was loosely inspired by Lewis Carroll's book, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. With his brother Roy, Walt Disney began an animation studio in Hollywood in 1923. The first released Mickey Mouse short debuted in 1929. Then in 1933, The Three Little Pigs, a 10-minute animated short in sound and full color, was a major hit. It was based on the Grimm's fairy tale that Walt had heard from his mother during his childhood. When Walt Disney decided to make a full-length animated feature, he turned again to the area of children's fantasy. In 1931, he began pre-production on Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. He considered next a version of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, and then Babes in Toyland, before finally settling on Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which was released in December 1937. Whether the Oz books were actually ever seriously considered for the first Disney animated feature isn't clear. The Oz books were included in the company's library, but no definite use of them had been decided by September 1937. About that time, however, Walt approached L. Frank Baum's widow, Maud Gage Baum, about the rights to the Oz books. Not necessarily because he had a specific project in mind, but to keep them out of the hands of competing movie studios. But Samuel Goldwyn had bought the movie rights to The Wonderful Wizard of Oz in 1934, and then sold those rights in 1938 to Louis B. Mayer at MGM, where the movie adaptation of The Wizard of Oz was made partly in response to the smash success of Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. The voice of Snow White, Adriana Caselati, actually reprised that role in the 1939 Wizard of Oz. During the Tin Woodman song, If I Only Had a Heart, you hear Snow White sing one line. Although the voice isn't necessarily recognizable to audiences today, back in 1939, Snow White's voice would have been instantly recognizable. In addition, a couple of the Munchkin actors also provided voices for several of Disney's animated characters, both in Snow White. There were at least a couple of the dwarves were also Munchkin actors, and a few of the Munchkin actors also provided voices in some of the Disney shorts. The first actual connection between Oz and the Disney Company, though indirect, occurred earlier in the 1930s. Ruth Plumley Thompson, who continued the Oz series after Baum's death, was hired by Philadelphia's David McKay Company, where she served as an editor, to ghostwrite several licensed books based on Disney's Silly Symphony series of animated shorts. The result was titles such as Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf in 1933 and Peculiar Penguins in 1934. The text of these books is credited to staff of Walt Disney Studio. But to anyone familiar with Thompson's writing style, the work is immediately recognizable as hers. Listen to this. Cold as Christmas, grumbled the big bad wolf. No sooner had the word popped out of his mouth than an idea popped into his head. Ho! He would play a Christmas trick himself, slide down the chimney like Santa Claus, and pounce on the three little pigs. With his green eyes snapping wickedly, he climbed up on the roof. Despite its successes, the Disney Company underwent growing pains and setbacks after the great success of Snow White. World War II and a major employee strike had long-term effects. The studio had some successes during the 1940s, but it wasn't until 1950 when another animated feature film based on an old fairy tale, Cinderella, was a major hit and allowed the Disney Company to get out of debt. The Disney Company was genuinely interested in Oz. A 1951 memo makes clear that Disney made annual inquiries to MGM about buying the rights to The Wizard of Oz. MGM, however, was well aware, even before their film adaptation of The Wizard of Oz became an annual event on television, that it was a valuable property. They had no intention of letting it go. Then in 1953, Maud Gage Baum, L. Frank's widow, died. On November 16, 1954, Disney bought the film rights to 11 of Baum's Oz books from Baum's son, Robert. Rights to The Wonderful Wizard of Oz and The Marvelous Land of Oz weren't available. In any case, the first Oz book was due to enter the public domain in 1956. Rights to Dorothy and the Wizard in Oz were owned by another company, Lippert Pictures, and Disney bought the rights to that book in 1956. In 1955, Ruth Plumley Thompson corresponded with Walt about the Oz books. She was eager for Disney to turn Oz books by both Baum and herself into animated features. For Christmas 1955, Thompson sent Walt a copy of her 1935 Oz book, Speedy in Oz, with the inscription, "To Walt and all the gay people in Disneyland, from Ruth Plumley Thompson and all the merry citizens of Oz." Walt thanked Thompson in this letter. Walt indeed was planning a project based on the Oz books, but it wasn't going to be animated, and initially it wasn't planned as a feature film. Disney saw Oz as a 2-episode arc for the hour-long Disneyland television show, which had debuted on the ABC network in 1954. The Disneyland TV show was so successful that Walt developed a second TV series. The Mickey Mouse Club debuted in October 1955 and showed 5 days a week, featuring the Mouseketeers, a troupe of singing, dancing children in trademark mouse ears and white shirts labeled with the name of each. The Oz project was planned to feature Mouseketeers, and Annette Funicello, Darlene Gillespie, Bobby Burgess, and Kevin Mucci Corcoran, as well as Tawny Kirk, Tim Considine, and Mouseketeer leader Jimmy Dodd. In April 1957, Disney hired Dorothy Cooper Foote to write the outline for this Oz project. Here's the first page. This summer day, a great electric storm was starting up over the Kansas plain. From the barn of the illegible Gale Farm, Toto, a small dog, emerges and barks at the gathering storm, and is immediately answered by the crackling thunderclap. Cowed, he trots hastily across the farmyard and paws his way through the kitchen door. Inside, he finds Aunt Em in a troubled mood. It's Dorothy's birthday, and Aunt Em planned a small party for her niece. But all morning, the telephone rang with calls from parents who were canceling out their children's invitations to the affair. Kansas people prefer not to court trouble by journeying about the countryside in such weather. The long plank table in the Gale farmhouse is laid and waiting in vain. There are simple favors, place settings, paper hats, and a handsome cake inscribed, "Happy birthday, Dorothy." At the far end of the table is a small, motionless figure, staring at the cake with terrible intentness. This is Moochie, a serious-minded 7-year-old boy belonging to the neighboring farm. He has come early. End of quote. The story of this project follows Dorothy, Moochie, and their friend Tom on a tractor ride across the deadly desert to the land of Oz, where they meet the Patchwork Girl and some new characters. It was based primarily on Baum's The Patchwork Girl of Oz, entitled Dorothy Returns to Oz. From her outline, Cooperfoot finished the screenplay in August 1957. By that time, the title had changed to The Rainbow Road to Oz. Walt decided to turn The Rainbow Road to Oz from a television project into Disney's first live-action musical feature film. Filming was scheduled for November 1957. Lily Hayward made a first revision of the screenplay. In December 1957, a second revision was completed by Bill Walsh, who was also assigned as producer. Here's an excerpt from Bill Walsh's revision. Dorothy, Moochie, and Tom are waiting beside the tractor outside the Tin Castle. Tom is getting restless. Where is she? Let's get out of here. Dorothy is puzzled too. I don't know what's keeping them. About this Broodle, Tom murmurs darkly. By the way, Broodle is spelled B-R-O-O-D-L-E. What about him, answers Dorothy. Kind of illegible looking, don't you think? Sure, he's all right if you like squinty eyes, I guess. Suppose he is a little strange. After all, he's a magician. They're supposed to be, well, strange. He gives me the yips. Oh, for goodness sake, Tom, be fair. Can't you see he's trying to help us? Look what he did about the patchwork quilt. All right, look. Instead of a goofy quilt, we've got a goofy girl. If you ask me, the youth comes out of the castle and gestures back toward the door. You, he says. Moochie casually translates. He says they're coming right away. Broodle and Patchwork Girl enter. End of quote. On the September 11, 1957 episode of the Disneyland television show, a segment was devoted to promoting the planned Rainbow Road to Oz. It featured some of the Mouseketeers proposing the idea for the film to Walt Disney. To bolster their idea, the Mouseketeers performed songs written for the film by lyricist Tom Adair and composer Buddy Baker. Costumes and sets were constructed for the Rainbow Road segment, including this Patchwork Girl costume for Mouseketeer Doreen Tracy. Along with fellow Mouseketeer Bobby Burgess, dressed as the Scarecrow, Doreen sang the song Patches. They sang that underneath these trees of patches and balloons. The two other songs performed on this segment were The Oz Can't Hop and The Rainbow Road to Oz. The segment was part of the 4th anniversary show of the Disneyland program and is currently available on video. For reasons still unclear, The Rainbow Road to Oz was shelved by early 1958. The first Disney live-action musical feature film became Babes in Toyland in 1961, also featuring some of the Mouseketeers. This development was an eerie parallel of the original Broadway Babes in Toyland in 1904, which had been produced as a direct follow-up to the hit Broadway Wizard of Oz. But unlike their earlier incarnations, neither of the Disney projects was a success. Disney's Babes in Toyland film was not well received, and The Rainbow Road to Oz was never produced, although a New York Times article announced it as still forthcoming as late as 1961. A project close to Walt's heart was the Disneyland theme park, which opened in Anaheim, California in July 1955. In 1959, 4 years later, work began on an Oz attraction for Disneyland. Dubbed Rock Candy Mountain, it was planned as part of the Storybook Land ride. The Casey Jr. train would run along a ledge of a transparent mountain made of rock candy, covered with oversized pieces of licorice, peanut brittle, fudge, lollipops, gumdrops, candy canes, and gumballs. When a magic password was shouted, each storybook-landed boat would sail through the mountain where scenes from the Land of Oz could be viewed. The idea was that the inhabitants all over Oz, including in the Tin Woodman's castle, were preparing to give Dorothy Gale a surprise birthday party. The final scene was the party in the Emerald City. A preliminary plan went something like this. Out of the gatehouse steps a gatekeeper who bows to the passengers of the boat who are cruising through the Rock Candy Mountain, and he says, "Welcome to Oz. Come join the party. It's a birthday party for Dorothy. Go right on in." Ornamental gates then open to admit the boat. Trumpeters trumpet as the boat sails past. Music plays as a group of dancers is applauded by an audience, all consisting of characters from the Oz books, including Scoodlers, Gnomes, Loons, Flatheads, Corners, and Spoons, Knives, and Forks from Utensia. Witches on brooms fly through the sky. Girl soldiers keep time to the music with their knitting needles. On the palace steps, the soldier with the green whiskers stands at attention, and Tick-Tock lifts his hat in greeting. The Scarecrow, Patchwork Girl, Jack Pumpkinhead riding the Sawhorse, the Wogglebug, and the Tin Woodman are there too, moving to the music. Flying in his balloon above it all, the Wizard of Oz waves his hat, out of which a rabbit pops, and sings. Under colored lights, 16 mist maidens in filmy costumes dance a graceful ballet. At the head of a table filled with Oz characters, the Cowardly Lion leads the singing with his tail. Aunt Emma and Uncle Henry join in and clap their hands, while Jim the cab horse beats time on a table with his hooves, making the plates jump. The Gnome King, Captain Fighter, King Rinky-Tink, and Bill the Goat sing as a quartet. Also sitting at or on the table are King Cleaver, the Shaggy Man, Captain Bill, the Hippogiraffe, the Big Lavender Bear, and the Little Pink Bear. Nearby, the Woozy flashes fire from his eyes while he plays with the Hungry Tiger's tail. On a terrace, rabbit musicians play instruments. Glinda stands in the doorway of a balcony above, nodding her head and turning her glowing staff. On a bridge overlooking the scene, Ozma stands with Dorothy, who smiles and blows kisses. In all, 252 characters were planned for the scene. Joe Rinaldi, Lane Gibson, Jack Fergus, and Raleigh Crump built 22 character models designed by Claude Coates. These included the Cowardly Lion, a Wicked Witch, a Spoon Man, and Tick-Tock. You just saw some of those. If this Oz attraction had progressed, it might have been the first to use audio animatronics at Disneyland. But, like the Rainbow Road to Oz, it was shelved. Several models of the exterior of Rock Candy Mountain have been constructed. Harriet Burns and Jack Fergus worked on one of the models using real candy, gluing on hundreds of pieces to the exterior. After the project was abandoned, this model was put out in the parking lot of the Imagineering studio as a treat for the birds. The local birds mostly cried out the nuts. Various reasons have been given for why the Rock Candy Mountain attraction never came to be. But I think the most logical reason is that it was tied to the Rainbow Road to Oz, the theme of Dorothy's birthday party in both the film treatment and the theme park ride provides the evidence that the two projects overlapped. Because the Rainbow Road to Oz film didn't happen, neither did Disneyland's Oz. Disney had made a large investment in the rights to the Oz books, but thus far, no project about Oz had reached fruition. In 1962, the written outlines of the Rainbow Road to Oz were pulled off the shelf to see if any of the material could be used in the proposed animated version, tentatively called Dorothy's Return to Oz, and then simply Return to Oz, many years before the release of the feature film of the same name. Joe Rinaldi and Otto Englander prepared an outline of a story, but nothing came of this plan. A probable reason for this was the competition from other animation studios, specifically Filmation's animated feature Journey Back to Oz, which began production in 1962, and the 1964 televised animated special Return to Oz, produced by Crawley Films for Rankin Bass. In 1965, Disney successfully brought forth an Oz project at last. Disneyland Records produced a long-playing record of the story of the Scarecrow of Oz. It was an adaptation of Baum's The Scarecrow of Oz, with Ray Bolger reprising his Scarecrow role from the 1939 MGM Wizard of Oz motion picture and narrating the story. The script compresses the plot of the book, but retains much of the storyline and all the important characters. The album cover opens to reveal a large booklet full of bright illustrations done by the Disney studio to accompany the recording. One new song was composed for the story of the Scarecrow of Oz, Happy Glow, which as a child I hated. It also incorporated a new recording of Over the Rainbow. The song, Happy Glow, was also issued on a 45 RPM. The B-side contained a non-Oz song, That Crazy Place from Outer Space, sung by Annette Funicello. Disney has done a couple Oz parodies. In 1966, the 10-page comics story, The Wizard of Oz, appeared in issue number 307 of Walt Disney's Comics and Stories. It featured Daisy Duck as a stand-in for Dorothy, and Pluto in place of Toto. Gyro Gearloose is the Wizard of Oz. The story was written by Vic Lockman with art by Tony Strobel and Mike Reuter. In 1969 came 4 more Disney Oz recordings. First was a long-playing record adaptation of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz in a format similar to The Scarecrow of Oz, including the illustrated booklet. Although the book itself was in public domain, Disney paid for the rights to many of the songs from the MGM movie version. Then came what's probably the most interesting of the Disney Oz records, the Cowardly Lion of Oz long-playing record. Disney did not own the rights to the Ruth Plumly Thompson Oz book of the same title, so they invented a brand new story in which the Cowardly Lion helps a little Oz girl named Forget-Me-Not to escape from the evil witch Smarmy. The story is actually very Ozzy. The 6 original songs by Buddy Baker and Tom Adair included 2 songs originally intended for the Rainbow Road to Oz, the Ozphabet and the Puppet Polka. It has been suggested that the other songs might have been written for the Rainbow Road to Oz as well, but surely the song Smarmy is too specific to this story on this album to have been created for anything else. Altogether, the Cowardly Lion of Oz is the most satisfying of the Oz albums produced by Disneyland Records. All the songs from these 3 records were compiled into one album called The Songs from the Wizard of Oz, and then in parentheses, plus songs about the Scarecrow and the Cowardly Lion. The cover art is, well, let's say interesting. It's so red and so dark. Dorothy looks a little like Marlo Thomas in that girl. This was the first Oz record I ever owned as a child. Actually, my best friend in first grade owned a copy before I did. And when I went to his house, I always wanted to listen to it. He preferred to listen to Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head. I'd seen the MGM movie several times and loved it before I read the summary of the story on the back cover of this album, which claims that the whole thing was a dream. What a shock. That had certainly not been my understanding when I'd seen the movie. I always believed Dorothy. And, well, within the context of the movie, I still do. One final Oz book adaptation released by Disneyland Records was The Tin Woodman of Oz. It was loosely based on Baum's Oz book of the same name, but for some reason the cover credits the source to Ruth Plumly Thompson, even though Disney held the rights to any of the Thompson Oz books. Baum's minor key ending of the original story was bizarrely changed to a 4-way wedding, with the Tin Woodman marrying Nimmy-Amee, the Cowardly Lion marrying a lioness, Whoop the Wanderer marrying Polychrome, the daughter of the rainbow, and the Scarecrow marrying a Scarecrowess that Ozma magicked up just for the occasion. Disney later issued another adaptation of The Wizard of Oz on record, a version narrated by Hal Smith. But I don't have a picture. I think there might, I don't know. I saw it somewhere recently, I thought it was back there, but I don't know. In 1973, Disney was again considering an Oz project for television. This never got past the pitch stage, but here are concept sketches for some of the characters. Some of you may know Tom Wilhite, since he's Willard Carroll's partner, and he attended the Winkie convention in the early 1990s. But in 1981, Tom Wilhite was the head of Disney's motion picture and television division. Disney movies were in a slump. Tom was interested in revitalizing Disney's output. He supervised such groundbreaking movies as Tron and Splash, and spent a great deal of time pursuing filmmakers he thought could bring new energy and new audience to Disney films. Walter Murch, a sound designer and film editor, was on Wilhite's list. Murch had worked on such movies as American Graffiti, The Godfather 2, The Conversation, Julia, and he won an Academy Award for his sound design of Apocalypse Now. The two men met, and when Wilhite asked Murch what he might be interested in directing, Murch, who'd been a fan of the Oz books since childhood, told Wilhite that he'd like to make a sequel to The Wizard of Oz. Wilhite informed Murch that Disney owned rights to the Oz books that were still under copyright. Soon after that, Wilhite authorized Murch and Gil Dennis to develop a new Oz feature film. Wilhite brought award-winning children's book writer and illustrator Maurice Sendak onto the project as a production designer. But in the end, Sendak departed, although the somber atmosphere he created in this production illustration captures well the feeling that emerged in the final movie. Norman Reynolds became production designer after Maurice Sendak. Cartoonist Mike Ploog was brought on to do the storyboards and character concepts. Several examples of his lively and colorful artwork are printed in this weekend's souvenir book. I'm not going to go into the creation of Return to Oz much, since it's been covered in detail in other presentations this weekend. While the movie was being made, there were two regime changes at Disney. Before production was even approved, Tom Wilhite was out and Richard Berger was in. Berger brought Paul Maslansky onto Oz after it developed budget problems. Maslansky, as producer, supported the project. At the 1984 World Science Fiction Convention in Anaheim, California, Craig Miller, then the Disney publicity consultant for Return to Oz, arranged a display of costumes and props from the movie. Before Return to Oz was released, Richard Berger was gone from Disney, replaced by Michael Eisner and Jeffrey Katzenberg, who had little interest in Return to Oz. And when the movie was released in June 1985, it was a critical and popular flop. Simultaneously paying homage to and trying to distance itself from the 1939 MGM Wizard of Oz, it confused many viewers. Its bleak atmosphere was criticized, and the horrors of headless Mombi and electroshock therapy declared unsuitable for a children's movie. And though there are certainly aspects of Return to Oz that deserve criticism, its strengths are solid and abundant. Fairuza Balk is arguably the best embodiment of Baum's Dorothy Gale ever captured on film. The characters of Tick-Tock, Bellina, and Jack Pumpkinhead are special effects triumphs, and the carefully wrought score by David Shire is glorious. Return to Oz generated a flood of merchandise in the USA, Europe, and Japan. Puzzles, bubblegum, stickers, a full-length novelization by Joan D. Vinci, many shorter books adapting the story, activity books, 2 comics adaptations, records, puppets, buttons, toys, posters, and more. The combination of Oz and Disney might seem at first glance to seem like a no-brainer, but even Walt Disney himself had for years been